Good
evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Evening.
All right, this is the second of a series of 5 budget workshop meetings to consider recommendations involving fiscal year 2020-2021. So what's in store for this evening are considerations involving various departments, including, it's noted as public information, but it's actually the Department of Communications as led by recently appointed Director of Communications, Gerald Walker. The various sections of the Department of Recreation and Cultural Arts, including administration, programs, facilities, and others, being led by Interim Director of Recreation and Cultural Arts, Michelle Johnson, who's with us as well. The city's electricity distribution system, College Park Power, led by Director of College Park Power, Hugh Richardson, who is also with us, to include the customer service section and meter reading section, which are all financed and operated by College Park Power. Additionally, last but not least, we have purchasing, which is the customer service section and meter. Yeah, somebody needs to, thank you, fix themselves up. So in any event, purchasing is a section of the Department of Finance and Accounting. So he'll have an opportunity to chime in and provide a couple of different updates based on previous direction. However, prior to us engaging the schedule as I just outlined, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to offer a piece of clarification relative to the phone expenses. During the April 8th, 2020 budget workshop meeting, we made a commitment to come back and offer some clarifications regarding the expenses associated with the phone expenses, telephone expenses, and that. And it's actually fairly straightforward. The cost considerations in various department line items along those lines actually did include or do include expenses to replace the phone system of specific telephones. And most departments are, of course, impacted by the general fund, and the total general fund expense to that effect comes out to be $36,471.04. An additional $3,791.58 for phone replacement activities included, for a total in excess of $40,000. Given our direction with respect to austerity measures, the recommendation at this time is to delay those expenses, whereby we will continue to utilize the existing telephone infrastructure for the time being. So the expenses associated with telephone line items will likewise be reduced accordingly as we continue this process. And again, when we're talking about a specific expense that has nearly a $37,000 impact to the general fund, and we're doing as much as we possibly can to keep expenses at minimal, I think that's a sound recommendation. So that's the basis of that clarification to a point we discussed during the April 8th session. And with that, I hope you all are supportive and can offer consensus for us to proceed as noted. Thank you.
Terrence?
Sir?
I have one question with regard to that.
Sure.
In one of the budgets down the line, there was a cost for Windstream of about $180, as I recall, $183 maybe.
Yes,
and it was for just one individual. And so I'm wondering, is there a Windstream charge of just under a couple $100 for every one of nearly 500 individuals?
Not of that many individuals. It's a set number. Michael Hicks, if you can chime in, please.
Yes, I can. Councilman Clay, the Windstream bill as a whole is divided amongst all the departments. And those charges are based on how many individuals you have in your department. Some departments pay more, some pay less.
Oh, I would assume that, but what is the total Windstream charge? That's what I'm getting at for the whole organization. What is our total Windstream charge that you split amongst all the departments?
Okay, I can get that number for you here in just a second.
About $14,800 a month, because I pulled that up earlier.
So
$14,800 a month for the whole organization.
Yes.
As I'm looking at, yes.
So why did so much get put on one person in our purchasing a person? That's I don't want to dig into it right now, but that seems strange, right?
No, again, the allocations are based on how many people you have in your department. Out of that 14,000, that's how much you pay.
I understand that, but this is only one person in one portion of a department. Anyhow,
Okay.
let's not get hung up on that. I don't want to take all the time. We got a lot to cover tonight.
If you don't mind, email me that specific question and I'll research it for you tonight.
Okay.
That one specific person, email that to me and I'll research it.
Okay, later.
I'll email you the allocation spreadsheet with the invoice. I have it up right now, so I'll email that to you right now so you can review it.
Okay, but if it's one specific person that he's talking about.
It's the entire bill. You should have it.
Okay, I didn't want to digress us that much.
So if we could go ahead and forward that information to you, Councilman Clay, can we call it good there?
Yeah, just let me know. And if I feel it's important for the group, I'll bring it back.
Yes, sir. Very well. That's fair.
Can you email me as well? Because I had that circled on mine.
Why don't we just email all 5?
Okay.
So, Thea, so sometime tonight, if not tomorrow morning or so, just email, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Just email the entire electorate that information so that everybody's equally provided the background.
Okay, I emailed Mike the bill, so he'll respond based on what I provided him as far as the breakdown, how it's allocated. Correct,
Very
Mike?
well. So
Absolutely.
from Thea to Mike, Mike to council, copy the rest of us.
Yes. Because
Fair enough.
my department are the one who do the allocation. So I'll get it straight, Terrence. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns regarding the telephone clarification? Likewise, we will proceed with the recommendation to reduce expenditures accordingly. So, Michael, we will continue to rely on the existing telephone infrastructure,
Yes.
given the current state of affairs, just to be clear. And I think that's a good step in the right direction, given the current state of affairs. So thank you.
Yes.
Unless there's anything further along those lines, ladies and gentlemen, the first on the docket, for lack of a better expression, or there are better expressions than that, first on the agenda, I should say, would be the Department of Communications. So you have an opportunity to review any line item considerations to that effect. Gerald Walker, you're on deck. Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free.
I understand the need for austerity, but have some questions about completely zeroing out any repair and maintenance of the equipment, no training, and no advertising. How do we rationalize that?
That was, I actually did not want to do that, but that was sort of the guidance when we came around for round 2 of cuts. I was given a number of about $57,000. And the best way that I could see through that was to go to those specific areas: advertising expense, training, dues, convention meetings, literally everything, computer hardware, computer supplies. I think I was left with about $5,000 to do whatever was necessary as far as technical aspect of any hardware. So, you know, I wanted to conform myself to what the directive was from management, from finance, as well as the city manager. So I certainly stand here ready, willing, and able to make any changes if someone believes that that's the right way to go.
If I may, Gerald, and again, that's the direction we've offered to every department. So in the case of the Department of Communications, very small operation, that's how they were able to achieve balanced budget recommendations. However, there are other line items such as other operating supplies that includes a $5,000 consideration. You talked about equipment opportunities at $3,684 in that. There's an opportunity to engage in interdepartmental and intra-departmental budget adjustments to take a look at training considerations in that. And as far as training, conventions, and meetings and that, there was not a concrete specific program developed as of yet. So my advice would be to give Gerald the opportunity to work with the Office of the City Manager to come up with some specifics, and from there we can make budget adjustments happen. But for purposes of achieving a balanced budget, this is where we are.
Terrence, let me piggyback in on that discussion. My experience from industry, I had some very large departments under me and very small departments. And generally, it was much more difficult for a small department to cut their budget for the obvious reasons that we've just explored with Gerald.
Yes.
Where you have a large department that's potentially lots of capital expenses, and you say, well, this one isn't quite as important this year, I can cut that out.
Right.
You may have some vacancies in a large department, and you say,
Sure.
well, I haven't filled those vacancies yet, maybe I don't need them.
Sure.
But in a small department where you only have a couple or three people, or maybe even 6 or 7, it's very difficult to make those adjustments. So generally speaking, my experience has been you just can't take a flat percentage, and I don't know how you did it, so I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of that, but you just can't apply the same brush to everybody. And I would suggest that that might be an area that we want to look at. And I did notice that there were some other departments that didn't cut their dues, for example. I think it's important that we maintain our position in certain professional organizations in each of the departments. And I think I heard Gerald say he cut those out. I think you just need to take another look at that budget.
If I may, ladies and gentlemen, we shall, and again, I like to have the opportunity to work closely with Gerald to make those adjustments. Again, there are a couple line items that I just talked about, BP equipment for purchases and that, and other opportunities, not to mention other operating supplies that will be adjusted intradepartmentally. And quite frankly, in the event that we develop a program that exceeds those adjustments within that department, we can take a look at budget adjustments for interdepartmentally as well. So we'll have that opportunity to address it. Right now, we're proceeding this way to achieve a balanced budget recommendation. And again, we do have the opportunity to develop a program. Gerald's been back with us for just shy of 2.5 months, and I'd like to be able to continue to work with him to get to that place. There aren't any specific abilities to say X amount of dollars for this training, that, you know. I like to take time to develop that with him, and we'll be able to make some adjustments from there. To your point, Councilman Clay, enabling us to take a second look.
Yeah, I do have a specific question on the budget if we're just not going to drop off of it. On packet page, not packet page, page 2 of 2 of the budget worksheet report, line 526170, which is contractual services.
Right.
And we had an actual amount this year of 28,000 that we've spent. And if you just assume the rate of expenditures, you'd add on, say about 30,000, you'd add another 10,000, you'd come out maybe around 48 or so. We've got 118,300 recommended.
Is that phase 3?
Yes.
Yes, that's phase 3, as well as some ancillary work involving Icon Filmworks, essentially.
23. I've got some in that account. There is what we expect to do to lock down phase 3 as a contractor next year. Also, there's some other equipment, and believe it or not, I've emptied the equipment line item, but there are some things that I'm hoping to look to purchase next year, which might even reduce this a bit. So, you know, there is some equipment, like the equipment dealing with the TV channel, that's now kind of on the fritz a little bit. It restricts our ability to broadcast live. I think this 12-year-old box needs to be replaced.
So we'll have some capabilities to make adjustments intradepartmentally to get to that place. And again, there's an element of fluidity to it, but again, it's a small enough, efficient department in which we can accomplish what we've just outlined.
Okay.
Gerald, do you have the money in here to get us running live on TV 23 as the budget stands currently?
I could use a little bit, but the answer is yes. But I think one of the other issues that needs to be considered is the advertising expense. And I would certainly love for you all to give it a little bit more consideration. I, again, at the behest of those who said we needed to go ahead and make some trimmings, I did that. But I'm a little concerned that part of what phase 3 has asked to do or has been asked to do is help us with advertising. And we've talked about Georgia Trend magazine, those types of things. If we don't have anything in that budget for advertising expense, then the next best thing I can think of is to go straight to advertising on those 3 electronic billboards, which we have access to at least 30 days per year, Lamar, Outfront, and Clear Channel. But I will say that I still think that we need some allotment for print advertising, because the mayor was just in Georgia Trend, and we could have had a half-page ad to go along with that. But the budget has been reduced to the point that I just think it should at least garner your attention, and I'll do what you wish.
I mean, to be fair about that particular point, there was, I mean, every other Southside city had advertising in that section. It does make me uncomfortable that, especially as we move forward in a number of projects that we have going on in the city, that we have 0 for advertising. I agree with Councilman Clay that in a smaller department, those across the board cuts are more difficult to make. And I really think we need to revisit that.
So let's talk about a recommendation now, because again, all the other considerations we talked about, there is some ability to make interdepartmental adjustments with efficiencies and operations in that. It would be appropriate for me to have the opportunity to work with Gerald to get to that place. So perhaps we can establish an initial advertising budget of what, a couple grand just to get started. But again, we'll make some other contributions as we engage the fiscal year once we develop a full-fledged program. Gerald, would that make sense as a start?
Yes.
As a start, I said.
Sure. And I will say that based on what we have been trying to do, even in recent years past, I have narrowed down 3 or primarily 2 very narrow magazines that probably speak best to what we want to market the city as. And it is Georgia Trend is one of them. And the only thing is that it being as popular as it is, it does have a sort of a price arc that would require us to certainly be conservative in order to participate with it. So I'm certainly willing to work with you. A couple of grand. I mean, a half page on Georgia Trend right now is probably about $42.50, maybe a little bit more, because that's what it was when I left. But yeah, I do think that I would certainly appreciate if there was some consideration for advertising, definitely.
Let me bring up one point of clarification I just thought about looking through my material in that. There's a $30,000 budget recommendation for joint marketing, collaborating with the Georgia National Convention Center and the abilities we have in that regard. Mercedes will touch on. So Gerald, you'll have that opportunity to collaborate with them as well. So if we were to start off conservatively with about a 2,000 grand allocation for advertising, there are some other abilities to get us to that place as well. So there's an opportunity for collaboration without being duplicative, if you will. So Mercedes and I, we've had an opportunity to discuss that ability and flexibility, and that is part of the package as well. So on that side of the aisle, ladies and gentlemen, the Georgia National Convention Center, the Associated Enterprise Fund expenditures does include some significant investment to that effect.
I'm sorry, how much is the GICC?
It's $30,000 in a joint marketing budget, it's called.
Joint with the arena or?
No, Georgia National Convention Center, the arena, but again, the city, not just that. So in other words, Gerald will have the opportunity to collaborate with Mercedes on general marketing of the city, the community, et cetera. Again, it creates that flexibility I was talking about earlier in terms of being able to tap other resources outside of what's outlined here because of the nature of communications.
Here's my argument, and my colleagues can take it, leave it, mull on it, whatever the case may be. But as we come out of this current situation, probably see ourselves in a recession, I understand that we have to cut back on certain things. We have an arena that a lot of people don't know about because it is relatively new, and our reach thus far has been largely regional. I don't want to put Mercedes in a position where she has to compromise even further getting the word out about filling that space, because I think that we're going to be challenged enough. And if we don't have sufficient resources to let people know about what we're doing, then we're going to have fewer people who are coming and taking advantage of the resources that we have. So I understand that Gerald requested 50. It looks like there's been about 10,000 spent so far. I would say at least 7,500.
I was going to suggest 10,000.
I was going to suggest 10 as well, and I was going to go down, Councilman Clay. I'm with you on 10. I'll take 10.
I'll go along with you all on that as well. But the 10,000, I think we need to be prepared right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, if
Coming back's going to be hard, guys.
Yeah, it will
Coming back's
be.
going to be hard.
And I think that we need to be able to have some ability to communicate that we're here, we're poised for business, conventions, all those sorts of things, and we've got to be clear about those messages. So
and we've got to advertise that we're safe. We've got to advertise that we're taking responsibility to make sure that we're doing all the appropriate things, because it's going to be it's not going to be turn on the light switch. It's going to be a gradual come up. There's still going to be distancing and various things, and we've got to make clear we're enforcing that in our restaurants, for example.
Yeah. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, may I make a request that we leave it there?
At 10,000?
Yes, because again, I emphasize and re-emphasize the other adjustment ability that does exist here with the other line items.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we beat this one to death.
I think so as well.
So I think yes, that's pretty significant considering what we've done.
Well, thank you all for your consideration. We're going to do the best with what we have, and I appreciate every consideration that you've made, and we'll be fiduciarily responsible in the upcoming fiscal year.
Any other questions regarding the Department of Communications and Gerald Walker? Very well. I'd like to have us then proceed to the Department of Recreation and Cultural Arts. So the specific sections are, of course, the golf course, recreation administration, recreation programs, and recreation facilities. Michelle Johnson, Interim Director of Recreation and Cultural Arts, who I feel is doing a yeoman's job leading the department, and her enthusiasm has become quite contagious, and I really appreciate that. I like to share that with the group for the record. I'm very grateful to her for helping us to get to where we are, and she's done an excellent job working with us in the proposed budget process as well. So Michelle, publicly, thank you. And with that, I'd like to have us proceed with the golf course. Any questions or specific concerns, observations regarding the golf course?
You want to go through page by page?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm ready to start with budget worksheet report, page 1, which is page 22 of the overall document.
Please.
On line, this is revenue now, 38,100. We're talking about other rental income, and it's going from a current actual amount of 1,100 up to 33,000. So what is going to be responsible for all this other rental income?
So I'm assuming they're going to do some renting of the clubhouse facility rental. So that they're trying to get that as a rental to go out for the club. I mean, for the clubhouse for the golf course.
Okay, I'm very sensitive to revenue areas, and I think suddenly ramping up in the first quarter of the fiscal year, beginning July 1, when we've only been making $1,100 off of it as of expending 3/4 this year, I think, as I've said it before, I think we may be counting ourselves rich. There's a similar area in the green fees where we've got, well, not just green fees, but that whole area of charges for service totals. It's in as 64,000, almost 65, as what we've accumulated so far. And it's going to jump up to nearly 130,000 projected for next year. And by the way, Michelle, I apologize. I usually try to give heads up to everybody. I only gave 2 people heads up on 1 or 2 items each. And I know you could have researched this if I had given it to you sooner, but.
And I expected it from you, and I was looking forward to seeing it tonight.
I apologize.
Yeah, I know Ed is extremely excited. He feels that the revenue is going, the golf course is looking great. He is truly optimistic and feels, once we build it, they're going to come. So, we're going to have concession sales along with some liquor sales and other things happening out there that's going to be superior for us for the golf course. So
just to add, Michelle, if I may, Councilman Clay. So when we visited with Michelle and Ed over at the golf course when proposing the budget, the revenue forecast that he actually presented far and away exceeded what was being presented at this time. So we actually did a pretty good job in terms of striking a balance. He had revenue forecasts 30, 40, 50% higher than what's actually being presented as far as recommendations. And so we did actually strike a balance in terms of being a bit more conservative based on what he presented initially. His observations and outlook were a lot more optimistic, but could very well have been realistic. But in order to strike a balance, we came back even more conservative than what he was forecasting. And these are the numbers we settled upon. So we left that budget discussion with a statement from him that, city manager, we think the numbers are going to be significantly higher, but for purposes of conservative revenue forecasting, we understand that, and this is where we are. So had it been up to Ed leading the golf course, you would have likely seen much higher revenue figures being presented, and we went about our process to strike a balance and reduce those revenue forecasts.
I understand. Developers are always optimistic too.
With what's going on, I think you need to be prepared.
Yes.
In case you do not get that, because I have some serious doubts if you'll get those numbers, but I just think you need to be prepared for it.
Yeah, it was prior to COVID. So yes, our discussions were all prior to this. So
yeah, I think you're going to lose. First off, to get back to the mayor's point earlier, I don't know how well our golf course has been advertised. And if we're going to make this dramatic advance, even without COVID, we're going to have to get the word out that things are different at the College Park Golf Course, and look at all that you can do there, and that's advertising.
yeah, we are working our way with that with the hotels. I know that there's some beginnings getting that information out to people that are visiting the hotels that we are there. So we are trying to reach out to them too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or observations regarding golf course? This is, for the reasons we spoke about, an element of a moving target, and we just need to monitor accordingly. But given all the empirical data and evidence and the aforementioned conservatism in terms of revenue forecasts applied, I like to give this an opportunity.
The revenue for part-time salaries to me seems a little high, but that's,
You mean the expenses, Ken?
yes, no, the revenue, yeah, expenses, I'm sorry. 51, 50, 30. You know, it was 28, but now we're looking at 64,800. That seems, you know, I don't know how much they make, but that's
Let me explain that one a little bit. So
okay.
the previous structure involved the contractual services. And so in 2019, 2020, we made the transition to have it as a true operation or function of the Department of Recreation and Cultural Arts. So a number of positions were actually contracted and not considered part-time. So we simply made them all part-time. And that's why the number is showing up as $64,800. Whereas before it was $28,875. So previously it was a separate line item for other contractual employees, but they're no longer contractual. They're all in-house employees now. That's why that number is reflected.
Okay.
I have a question on the next page, page 2 of 3. About midway down the page, line 52, 57, 80, grounds. The department had requested $30,000 or so, and it got set to 0. And I don't understand how we can set grounds to 0. It must be getting done somewhere else. Is that true?
There's some activity underway right now, and you'll recall the Brownfields grant recently authorized. It does include some opportunity to take care of the grounds that way. So there isn't a need to budget in that regard. We're taking advantage of the funding opportunity that way.
That's good news.
Yes, it is. And that's why that was an easy recommendation to make, sir.
Okay, thank you.
How much is allocated in the Brownfield grant?
So that grant was somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000.
Yeah, it was big.
It was
I'm
big.
for no, I know, I understand the grant itself, but for grounds, like how much could we expect to use from that grant for grounds?
So roughly the portion of the grant to support grounds to that effect would slightly above 100,000, as I recall. We'll have to get you the specifics as we continue to administer it, but it's pretty significant. That's the way to go.
That's all I had. I don't know anybody else.
We're also zeroing out on line 52, 57, 46, repair and maintenance on the building.
Terrence, do you want to?
Go ahead, Michelle.
So again, so the recommendations when we were discussing the cuts, we talked about reevaluating halfway in the middle of the year based on revenues on what we would need to upkeep or change on maintenance for the facilities, because it is a fairly old facility over there, the
Right.
clubhouse and stuff like, and we are doing renovations currently now over there that they're almost, in fact, hopefully will be done this week. So we were going to reevaluate based on this being new to us, taking over the whole entire golf course. We were going to reevaluate based on the income revenue projections and then come back around and discuss what could be done.
So it sounds like you think that you're, because of the work that you've been doing up there, that you're not in too bad a shape going into the next fiscal year.
Correct.
Yeah,
something
well,
to work
that
on.
makes sense.
Getting there, just evaluate after 6 months in here. If the revenue's great, then we can discuss what we need to do further in repairs.
Yeah.
Equipment things that we need to look at that we looked at for grant, same thing. Equipment costs that we were looking at.
Any other questions or observations concerning the golf course section of the Department of Recreation and Cultural Arts?
I think you might have to transfer more money in than you think.
And again, as we go past the first quarter into the second quarter, we will have to address that as we go along for the reasons.
Right,
we
and
outlined.
that's the golf course is a good place because of the seasonal, you can do that somewhere.
That's exactly right. It makes sense.
Yeah, and Councilman Allen, that's been a discussion that we've openly, Terrence and I and Ed, been talking about. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or observations concerning golf?
Good job, Michelle.
Oh, you're so nice.
Experience.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up is Recreation Administration. So Recreation Administration consisting right now of a director position and the administrative assistant position. The assistant director position that was initiated the previous fiscal year is actually one of the outcomes of a hiring freeze, so there will not be any direction to fill that vacancy immediately. That is reflected in the proposed budget process going forward. So once we get back to full revenue outcomes and no longer the need to engage in austerity measures, we'll get back to that place. But for now, Michelle is the principal.
So did you say that's been left out of the budget? The budget's been reduced by that amount?
In the Recreation Administration section, it has.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Or it will, yes. So on that note, Thea, if I can ask you to chime in for a second, if you were to take a look at salary operating, it references 173,986, which includes the, I believe that number includes the assistant director position, but we will be reducing that amount by the salary of the assistant director position, correct? That's for you, Thea.
What line are you on?
51, 50, 10.
I don't see the 173 number that you're talking about.
No, neither do I.
2121 city manager recommended, 515010 expenses. The very first line item.
It says 149,986 as your recommendation.
That's
Yeah.
what I see.
Okay, yeah, it's been updated then. I'm sorry. I have an old document.
Karen.
All right. Yes, ma'am, please.
That position, I mean, that department only includes, the salary line includes a admin assistant. Yes, there is no budget for the assistant director. There is a
That's what I
budget.
wanted to clarify. I'm reviewing my old documentation, so you all have the right number. Stand correct. Thank you.
There are 4
That's
park
correct.
rangers budgeted in that department. That's what it is. There's 4
Got it.
park rangers part-time budgeted
Got
as
it.
well.
Yeah, I don't know why they're an admin, but that you're correct, Althea.
All right,
Yes.
just to clarify, I think the electorate, they have the correct numbers.
Okay, so we have the latest documentation.
Greatest,
Yes.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, just to clarify, my apologies.
I've got a question on packet page, on page 2 of the budget worksheet, which is 39 of the document. There's a line item near the top, 526193, which is citywide events. And that has been set to 0. And what are we cutting out as, does that mean no Christmas parade, for example?
No, so we do have some of those items in our regular programming. This is admin. Normally that is in programming. Those were some new events, the Black History Cultural Arts Council, pop-up parties, and the Jazz on the Lawn. If you look, it was 4,000 and there was 0 actually spent. So I think they originally were going to put them back in admin, but they're in our programming.
Okay, so it's a functional reduction, not an actual program reduction.
Correct. It's
This portion of the budget. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to say it's as a general concern that I recognize. Again, we have to make cuts. We have to ensure that this budget is balanced and makes sense. But I'm concerned with the idea that we are not spending. I mean, I'm it's sort of this general trend that we're not spending anything on training our employees.
That's a general problem.
Yes.
Yep. And I recognize, I mean, Councilman Clay, that, Councilman Allen, that the GMA conference was just canceled for this summer, but they're going to be doing an online component. And so I would assume that as certainly probably until the end of the year, at least, that we're going to be looking at opportunities for people to receive training in different ways, probably less expensive ways than actually going places in person. And I want people to be able to take those opportunities. I mean, zeroing them out is concerning to me.
So, Mayor, I actually looked at that today and went through and researched, because I looked through every line item today, because it is a concern, but GRPA stops registration. So a lot of these trainings, we're not sure if they're even going to happen. So I did not look at online. So the training that we have done is GRPA. And so there's different dues in training. But conventions is something that's held once a year. And this is still just one person in this, and or two people in the admin. So it's not necessarily the staff. So for admin training, GRPA I've been to through the 24 years. So, to not go 1 year to take a look at that is something we can possibly look.
Okay. I'm going to push back a little bit, Michelle, because I would make the argument that your duties have changed.
Yes. And I agree with that too, because I looked at absolutely looked at going for the directors, and I checked on Washington, DC, which is only hosted once per summer, and it is delayed. So I don't know if those opportunities will be there.
Okay. I just want to be able, I want us to be in a position to support you and anyone else who wants to be the best in their positions. I recognize that we have budgetary constraints, and it's going to be tough for everyone. So I presume that there are going to be more creative opportunities for people to participate in training. And I don't want us to be able to lose out on those opportunities because we've budgeted.
They were minimum, very minimum for the registration. So I think online might be even less. I think most of it would have been travel, hotels, room, meals. So I looked at that because I am very interested in some of that training, especially in cultural arts and different aspects for the department.
We've always been very big on training. Over the years, we've extensively supported the staff on training. And a lot of times it hasn't been taken advantage of because of the workload and what have you. But I think council has always supported training, and I'm totally in agreement with the mayor that we need to do something. And I think it'll also be reduced. It won't cost us much. For example, GMA, I think, is providing a virtual meeting, and I think it's going to be free. And they're returning all the charges that we've paid in registration. And others may do exactly the same thing. I'm sure they will. So we may have a little more money coming back this quarter that we can carry forward to next year to spend.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. I know when I was at Delta, one of the first things when it got tough, everybody would cut their training, which is completely the opposite. I think we need to be looking into different ways to get this and take advantage of it and make sure our people can take advantage of the time that they've got right now. So
yeah, I totally
and ready and emerging from the downturn, which will, we will emerge, ready and prepared, right?
Absolutely.
To that point, Mayor, I think I don't know whether I made it in the group discussion or with a couple of people, but to the extent that we've got employees at home that are working from home, but maybe they have some flexibility and they have more time than they had before, we should be encouraging them and the directors should be working with their people to see what areas they can use to our advantage to be training during this period of sequestration, of isolation.
I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. So noted.
All right, I beat the training line item into the ground, I think. All right.
Otherwise, any other questions regarding recreation administration?
I assume the materials and supplies are getting transferred elsewhere.
We have material and supplies in both the programs and facilities that we could, because it's just us in admin, whatever we would need, we would order through those other accounts.
Fair enough.
Any others, ladies and gentlemen?
I'm good.
Councilman Taylor, Councilman Gay? Recreation programs.
Programs,
Programs, yes.
facilities. Did I jump ahead? Maybe I jumped.
And program starts on, the budget worksheet starts on page 56. I think
Alright,
you're,
sorry, I
you
jumped.
are ahead of us.
Yeah, I jumped ahead. There
Althea,
was
do we
one
have-
line 52, 57, 30 on page 1 of 3 that was, we spent $10,000 this quarter, I mean, this year on repair and maintenance of vehicles. And department head requested 4,000 and we've only got 1,000 in there. And I know we have to cut back, but how can we not repair vehicles that break down?
Yeah, it's our vehicle fleet's getting older. So it is a possibility, but we were going to push as far as we possibly could. It's time to replace a few of the vehicles too. So I'm hoping nothing breaks down.
So I want to talk about.
but $1,000 is barely enough to get. To get everything an oil change.
Correct.
Let's. If we are, I don't think it makes sense to make cuts where we know we cannot honor them.
Right.
I don't know. Like we got to be realistic about this. I understand I feel like I'm a broken record. I understand we have to make cuts, but there's no way.
If I may, ladies and gentlemen. So working with Moody's, we are able to determine what estimated expenses are to maintain specific vehicles and regarding specific fleet. So oftentimes when you review a repair and maintenance vehicle line item, it's based on a calculation coming from Moody's. That's analysis we rely upon in order to make budget recommendations in those respective line items. So generally speaking, in some areas, it's pretty inexpensive. Some areas it's more expensive. As we get into some of the larger departments, you'll be able to see that. So based on the analysis and our discussions in that, those are the outcomes in terms of recommendations.
Moody's said it was going to be $1,000 for repair and maintenance of the rec center vehicles.
No, the amount that was cut was based on what we needed to cut. So, I mean, that's, trying to meet a number in order to do so.
Well, part of the initial request considered, I think there was a new vehicle consideration.
Correct.
That's the bulk of what we adjusted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is it prudent to purchase a new vehicle for recreation and cultural arts in this particular section right now, given where we are? No. So that was the adjustment we made.
But the repair and maintenance of the vehicles we have will cost us more than $1,000.
Well, right now, based on what we're working with right now, that may be, again, it's a moving target given where we are at this point. So any event that happens, we're looking at another intra-departmental budget adjustment.
Okay, what I'm saying is, let me be clear. I do not believe this number, like for 1 second, that it's going to be $1,000. And we might as well be honest about what it's going to cost so we don't have to go back and make the adjustment. What is Moody's saying about these particular vehicles? I mean, if it's going to cost what it costs, because if we don't do the maintenance, then we end up with a blown engine on the side of the road and a vehicle we can't use at all.
Right.
Yeah, well, let me piggyback on that, Mayor. It's foolish, it's ineffective to put in a budget that isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And for example, let me give you an example of how you could do this cut. What you could say is, okay, we've got 5 vehicles. We can't maintain them for this amount. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to mothball 1 vehicle or 2 vehicles or what have you.
Yep.
Now we're going to look at how we can support the programs that we have with 2 vehicles that we can afford to maintain. And that's the way the realism has to be injected into the budget. But to put a number in that says, you know darn well from the start that you're not going to be able to make that number, that's just not an acceptable way to budget. Just the same way it's not acceptable to budget for revenue that the probability of getting it is extremely slight.
I don't think that's what we've done, ladies and gentlemen. I've never operated that way in my life, nor am I at this time. So again, if there's an interest in making an adjustment, that's fine, but there's no basis to suggest that that is the way we operate. It's a lot more responsible and based on data and analysis, far more than that. So if there's an interest in making an adjustment, we can take a look at that at this time. But again, of the various budget processes I've been involved in during my time in College Park the past 7+ years, this is one in which there's some element of moving target to that effect. So we do what we can to get to the best place possible.
Okay.
So if there's an interest to make an adjustment, let's just go for that. But
this is what I need to know. This is what I need to know. I need to know what Moody's says it's going to cost to do repair and maintenance on these vehicles for the next fiscal year. If there is a decision made, just like Councilman Clay said, to not operate a certain percentage of the fleet, then it seems appropriate that you would take off the repair and maintenance for that. But this doesn't.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's $21,000 in the depreciation and equipment too. So there is money there to spend if it is a vehicle at cost.
One of the problems you run into, and I understand what you just said, Michelle. I would rather see the depreciation account reflect accurately what we think the depreciation is going to be, or cut it back or whatever, and put.
That's not a depreciation account.
Pardon?
That's not a depreciation account. We
Okay, well, whatever account it is. If you have an account, here's what I'm trying to say, guys. If you have an account that you're using as sort of a contingency account, call it a contingency account. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with cutting accounts to the bone. I think this is cut through the bone on this one. But I don't have a problem with cutting back, knowing that you have a certain probability of overrunning, and then say, well, we've got this contingency account of X that we will fill in, because that forces the department managers to come and ask for the money, and enforces a tight budget. And I think that's kind of what Terrence had in mind in the back of his mind, that you have that ability. You want to keep things tight. But somewhere you need to have some money that you just don't assume, well, I'm going to borrow it from over here or over there, because everybody thinks they're going to borrow it from the same place, and it ain't going to be enough.
And that account is accounted for. The D&P equipment, the email, license, Mimecast, Tyler. So that 21,000 is accounted for.
You're correct. I'm sorry. That was incorrect information. You're correct.
You're breaking up a little bit, Althea.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. You sound pretty fuzzy.
Is this better?
A little bit better. You just sound like you're far away, sort of echoey a little bit, but that was better.
Get closer to the mic.
I am as close as I can be, but what I was saying is that those that account, the line items in that account, so that's basically accounted for, the 21,000.
Okay.
So
yes, so that was incorrect that I said.
So I think we
see it called what it is.
Accurate number on line item 5,700.
Okay. Well, it was 5846.54 was the actual
right
for 2019 to date.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Mr. Moody Willis. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir.
We've talked about the ability for Moody's to enter in data on a specific vehicle basis. Some conversation in one of the meetings, maybe a month ago, I think was that, well, we didn't have a necessary record per vehicle of what maintenance had been done and what the cost for that particular vehicle was. And I couldn't believe that we didn't have that. And I know you and my condolences again. I'm glad to see you back. And I know we didn't, you weren't here for a while, but do we have data on a per vehicle basis that we can say, oh, this work's been done and we're changing the oil every 2 weeks, and that's an indication that the engine's going to go?
Well, right now there are 305 various reports that can come from Square Rigger. It will be a matter of identifying which reports we can actually access to pull the different information that you're trying to obtain as far as vehicle history. Right now we're having some technical issues with the system, so I have not been able to get in to look at these various reports. And I know a lot of it went down when Mr. Sublet was out with his unfortunate father's passing. So we're trying to get back into it in order to run these reports. Just from some of the numbers I've been able to gather, we do have an extensive fleet. There are roughly 97 vehicles that were purchased between 1989 and 2009. The remainder of the fleet from 2010 to now, we have about 103 within this time frame. In order to get into Square Rigger, the system it's not user friendly. So have to do a bunch of steps just to find out the current vehicle in question in order to find out what the maintenance has been once Moody's enters the record into the system. I'm just guessing one day I would need to go down and actually watch them go from start to finish with the vehicle to make sure it's being captured into Square Rigger for us to navigate and pull records on.
Amen. There was a period where several years ago, where we had a lag of entries into the system. And I expect if it's delayed a couple or 3 months or whatever it was, then that's a potential problem of getting the accurate, right data. But the mayor and I are exactly on the same page. And I'm pushing even more, I guess, I want to know by specific vehicle what maintenance has been performed on it, how much it costs, so we can do an economic trade-off as to whether it makes sense to replace that vehicle or to keep it on. And that's going to be extremely critical right now because of the things we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
So I would encourage everybody, if the sooner we can get that information squared away, and maybe get from Mr. Hicks, Michael Hicks, a system analyst to help you with straightening out the data entry. And if it's the simple fact that Moody's isn't entering the data correctly or in a timely fashion, that's what you would see in an overview if you visited them and watched the process as you suggested. So I strongly encourage us to dig into this, because fleet management is going to be extremely important over the next several years, I think.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as far as the question regarding the repair and maintenance vehicle line item, so Thea, we just talked about and clarified the $21,000 note, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so are we therefore able, just to make everybody more comfortable, we can make an adjustment on the repair and maintenance vehicles line item based on that capability? So let's come up with a number based on the concerns haven't been expressed tonight so that we can continue to move forward. So
Okay.
Thea,
Yeah, we can add an additional 5,000.
okay,
And that'll put us in line with where we were in the past fiscal years.
Right.
yes, ma'am. So it's based on a trend from the previous fiscal year, based on the $21,000 capabilities haven't been discussed. We can make an adjustment there so as to provide an additional comfort level. So
Okay.
if I can have consensus to that effect, we can move forward.
Okay. I'm good.
Good, fair enough, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
I'm good with that. I would just like to say it's data, it's not comfort.
Well,
Right.
my words, but it's data. That's just me being somewhat my
I
little
mean, but
relative.
like, I think we're trying to make the best decisions off of the data that we have.
That's
And
correct.
and
Absolutely.
it's not because I feel good about it. It's because this is what we've spent in the past. There's no way we're getting to $1,000. And so the more data that we have, the better decisions that we'll be able to make, which is why I think Councilman Clay and I both are, fully supportive of getting as much information as we can from Square Rigger. So we have a sense of how we move forward. But that horse has been beaten too. Let's keep on moving.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Additional 5 it is. So Thea and Clachette, when you all convene, us know that that'll be an adjustment and we know where to take that from. So I'm good to go and let's proceed from there. Otherwise, are there any other questions regarding recreation programs?
Tell me what shared personnel costs are. 5041. Just give me an example.
5041, hang on.
51.
That
Oh,
is
5041, that would be HR. I don't put those numbers in.
Thea,
I would have to check the detail, but normally shared personnel means if you're sharing because sometimes as far as you have employees from Public Works that may serve as in a different capacity in recreation. So that's basically shared between departments. So they'll be charged there versus being fully charged under their department.
I think we've got some park rangers that work at the GIC and come back over.
that's correct.
Yeah, maybe seasonal.
Yeah.
Part-time in one place. And I know I can think of one gentleman from GICC that's over there and then comes back for park ranger with us.
Okay, I just kind of was wondering what that was. Okay.
Okay.
Any others regarding recreation programs? If not, I'd like to have us proceed to recreation facilities.
What page is that, Terrence?
Well, I have the physical book in front of me. So
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
that's
I've
better.
got it. Never mind. I've got it.
My physical notes, I should say.
Yeah, it's actually packet page 77.
77 is where it starts, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
the org chart's on 75.
Right. So it starts on 77 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some questions. Heat and power. It went up 120%. And some of these, by the way, Michelle, some of these I wouldn't have sent to you anyhow, because I don't think that's your issue. I think it's an allocation issue. Why would heat and power suddenly go up? We've spent 251,000 right now.
That's the true cause. It's not an allocation. Kim, if you'd like to chime in, it's basically the meters are read and it's processed within the system, and then we allocate it based on this actual charge. Am I correct, Kim?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's not an allocation.
Okay, well,
that's actual usage.
okay, so our actual usage right now is 251,000 at the end of March, presumably.
Yes, sir.
So just rough math, if that were 270,000, you'd add another 9,000 to it, and so you'd be at 90,000. You would add 270 plus 90, and you're up to 360. so why are we where we are with the number being 220? I mean, it went down. Why would it go down? We've already spent in 3 quarters what you would expect it to go up, and it went down to 220.
It'll probably go down as far as the first quarter. The facilities aren't being used at this moment, and we don't expect it to be used for the first quarter of the fiscal year, so that it should reduce.
Okay, so you're anticipating the COVID effect. All right.
Yeah, I'm not
I
sure.
think it's over anticipation in that particular case, but maybe
Yeah.
you're right.
I got a question on 52, 57, 40 goes to 0.
52, 57, 40.
Are you
Mine is
5746 or 40?
46.
46, okay.
I noted that today. I put issue. I don't know if that was a mistake. I have an exclamation mark by that today.
Good catch, Ken. I missed that one.
That's a big one.
Go ahead.
No, I just said that's a big one.
Yes. So we were talking about, there were a number of large scale capital improvements to be anticipated in that regard. So there was a major renovation at the Tracy Wire Recreation Complex and some other recreation facilities. And quite frankly, much of what we're involved in right now are based on community development block grant funding coming to fruition.
Correct.
And therefore, we felt that it was prudent to not commit or overburden the general fund at that level at this time. So
That was the roof at Wyatt Center. That is correct.
yes, so we are
The roof,
simply
okay.
delaying that,
Yes.
or the recommendation is to delay that. It's not time.
And I apologize. That again.
That's what that is.
What stage is the roof at now? What is the expected life of it?
It's need and replacing. They've been patching it, but they're looking at a whole new roof, and the system is extensive. I know Lance got me up to speed on that. They were going to do a whole new membrane, but they've been coming out and patching and it just needs to be redone. It's 10 years old.
We think it may last another year or two based on continued maintenance along those lines, but not much longer than that. So in all likelihood, as we continue to get back to a full place, if you will, we will make that a priority. It's just not going to happen 2020, 2021 per the recommendations noted.
How old is that roof?
10
The
years.
building, 10 years, yeah.
What's the warranty?
The warranty was probably 5.
Can we check just to see?
I will check on it. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, just curiosity, yes.
Yes.
So that $250,000 was for that one facility that's 10 years old. So we're simply contemplating a delay of about a year. Any other questions or observations concerning recreation facilities?
Maybe, yeah. Workers' compensation administration. I noticed this, it just happens to be, I'm picking on this budget, but I noticed it throughout the different departments. It's gone up. What is workers' compensation administration, and why has it gone up by 39%?
That's an allocation based on covered insurance for insurance purposes.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you, Althea.
That's an allocation based on what we pay insurance coverage across the board.
Okay, so then my next question is, why has our insurance across the board gone up?
I'm assuming it's, someone's there? I'm
I'm sorry,
assuming,
I was talking over you. I'm sorry, Althea.
no problem. I'm assuming it depends on our workers' comp claims over the years. If there's been a large number of claims, that'll increase our premium. Did you hear that, or am I still?
You're good.
Okay.
The more claims you have, the higher percentage it goes up for the next year.
Correct.
Yeah, but another question then, why have our claims gone up? Have we done an analysis of why our claims have gone up? Do we need safety training? You can follow this chain down to the bitter end, but at some point, the answer could be, hey, premiums have gone up across the industry and there's nothing you can do about it. That could be an answer, but it also could be an answer that we've gotten lax on safety. I don't think we have.
No, we have not.
But
McLean,
that's where I'm
yes,
going.
that's a compelling factor. So in the month of May, I'm anticipating either the May 18th meeting or the June 1st meeting. Every year, City Council considers the reauthorization of insurance policies. So our broker to that effect, Michael White is his name, he'll offer some updates to that effect regarding trends in the industry. And that's the biggest compelling factor of them all as to why we are where we are. So throughout the budget, you'll see slight increases.
Right.
And that is a function of the industry, and that will be so confirmed via one of those upcoming City Council meetings. So really, we have no choice.
Do we have the ability to bid this out to see if we can get lower rates from someone else?
That happens every year. So our benefits broker, and again, we're not talking about the RRP group. We have another benefits broker, a fellow by the name of Michael White, insurance company, bringing on board Liberty Mutual, other companies. We've made changes to that effect, Mayor, the last couple of years, and it's an annual exercise. So that process is to be initiated shortly via the Department of Human Resources and Risk Management. So recommendations will be presented at that time in terms of where we are. And that's why I was able to comfortably respond to Councilman Clay's concerns, because that's something that we do every year. So it is possible that those numbers may very well go down, but based on what is happening in the industry trends and such, the numbers are coming out to that effect. So yes, you'll have that information circa May 18th, circa June 1st.
Okay, I have another question on that page 2 of 3, line 52, 60, 70. It says that our pool expenses are going up to $50,000 from $34,000, which is a 47% increase. And Michelle, you seem to think that they probably should be even higher than that, which leads me to believe what's going on with pool supplies.
So it's not that. We were looking at the splash pad, preparing for if that's something we bring on, that we would have to be able to have chemicals. So we're looking at a possible another pool scenario.
Okay, so you've taken into account, if we get the grant, that we would add in another 20 or 30. Well, I think it was what, $30,000 for.
It would depend if we needed staff, and I'm still in consulting. We did get it was about $20,000 for chemicals, and there's no staff needed. We would take I did find out we would take our lifeguards from those pools to check those chemicals and go back. So there wouldn't need to be any more added staff to that. So that was some of the information with grabbing and getting together for that.
Okay, thank you.
Plus, I'm not sure, about the pools for the summer too. We're not, unless COVID.
Oh yeah, well.
Apple opens the pools. We're looking at June 1st, and we're almost May. So
yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
So this might be, a line item we are preparing the pools though. They are being prepared to go.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions in this particular section, ladies and gentlemen? And recreation facilities.
That's all I have.
All right, Councilman Clay or Gay, Ken Allen, Mayor Motley Broom, Councilman Taylor.
Good, thanks.
Very well. With that, Michelle Johnson, I believe you would be excused. So you have a good evening, and thank you for it all.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'll be listening. Thank you guys.
Good.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
So next is College Park Power, of which there are several sections. So we'll begin with Power Line. And Hugh Richardson is with us to help facilitate this discussion or to address any specific questions or concerns that might exist.
I had prepared a memo to send everybody. I don't know if you got it or not, but it kind of explained some of our revenues and expenses.
Could you walk through that?
Yes.
I thought before, I think you just transmitted it again, and I can't bring it up on my computer. I've had computer problems, so.
Yeah, here are the assumptions in this budget. Since we had the CD, they defaulted on their contract, we're putting $5 million additional power cost adjustment that will start in November and end in April, and that coincides with the winter rate, so it won't hit the customers as hard because the winter rates are less for residential. So that would generate another 725,000 of the 1.1 million we're not getting from the credit from the city. The rest of the money was made up by cutting the capital expenditures and the contingency amount. We're also assuming in this budget that block data processing will continue at an average of 8 megawatts, and that 2.85 per kilowatt hour through the end of the year, and then they'll jump to about 4.1 cents starting in January. So their revenue is about 2.5 million. If they don't use that much power, then of course our commercial revenue will go down. MEAG's cost will also go down because they'll sell at excess on the market, but at a less price.
That's an assumption that they'll sell excess on the market.
Yeah, I mean, we have to assume that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I wouldn't make the same assumption.
Yeah.
But if everybody is in a reduced consumption mode, we may find that we can't sell it on the spot market, or they can't sell it on the spot market, or you'll have to sell it for less.
Yes. Yeah, the market price gone down. It tracks natural gas prices, and it's gone down pretty low right now. So we're making a little bit markup with block data or virtual Citadel. And as y'all know, MEAG is 83% of our expenses. So that's our big cost. And 9.5% of MEAG's cost is fixed. So we don't sell any kilowatt hours at all. We'll be paying that 2-something million a month regardless. Most of our budget cuts, we did a lot of budget cuts, 2.3 million in capital expenditures. So we cut out all traffic signal upgrades, all the 6 West capital expenditures, underground replacement for one of the apartments we need to replace, most of the LED lighting upgrades, our distribution automation system, which we've cut out of the last 3 budgets. So it's really back down to nothing. We left some lighting in there, and of course the Sheraton service and the Hawthorne subdivision part of that.
I'm sorry, Hugh, were you finished?
No, for now, yeah.
Okay. The distribution automation, can you tell us a little bit more about, I mean, it seems to be on the chopping block.
Yeah, that's an addition I'd like to put in our system one day. It's basically an auto transfer system that we put on our distributions line. So if we have a line down, it will isolate that and restore power automatically to the other customers. It's expensive, and we don't plan to put on every circuit, but I think we have to pick and choose the circuits that we put us on.
So essentially that the pushing off of that means that we aren't able to provide service at a certain level. I mean, that as good as we could do it. I mean,
I agree. Yes.
I mean that. Okay.
It pretty much enhances our reliability.
Right. You said it so much better than I was trying to.
Yeah. Now, I did have a conversation with Althea, and sorry, Althea, I got to bring this up, but part of my list to change the budget after the cuts was the fact that MEAG Power's expense could go down. One thing is we did not include 1.2 million in the original reduction. It was 1 million, so there's 200,000 there. And if we sell less to our customers because of the pandemic, then they can sell more offline, off system. So that's a potentially 1.1 million we could reduce MEAG power. Althea didn't do it, but she left it in like as a cushion. So we can discuss that and pick up some more capital expense, because right now we have no expense for 6 West, any kind of work there.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, based on that analysis, Hugh, and working with Thea, yourself, and that, my initial hope was that we would be able to ironclad make that a definitive budget recommendation, but we aren't in position to do that. So I would like to advocate that we consider a budget adjustment once those realities come to fruition.
Sure.
So once those realities come to fruition, we're then looking at resulting savings to be able to take care of some of the capital expenditures we initially contemplated. So that would be the recommendation in that regard. It's hard for us or difficult for the city of College Park to budget based on what we're talking about, but should that come to fruition and we have empirical data to support that it may, then we can take a look at some of the respective capital expenditures in the process of accepting that outcome as well.
Okay.
One thing that we, in a way, have going for us, and I think you've accomplished it in the budget, is with the GICC and the arena not operating or operating at diminished capacity, we will use less electricity. Now, we are stuck to buy a certain amount of electricity unless it can be resold to use point. So if we are optimistic and assume it can be resold on the spot market, then that has reduced our expenses in those areas. I would also mention that I see on page 4, and you don't need to go there, but on page 4 we're putting out transferring 115,000 to the general fund. So we are subsidizing the general fund out of the power fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's I guess that's the zero out number, almost like a contingency. So. Is that right, Althea?
If the power fund does not generate any income, we don't make that transfer.
If they do not generate an income.
Correct.
But right now, I'm presuming that your general fund budget is assuming it's got that 115,000.
Recommendation does support that, and that is actually a function of, Thea, help me out here, expenses associated with the general fund activities that support College Park Power. My time, your time.
Indirect cost allocation. That's the indirect cost allocation that you've been allocating across the board, which is common for enterprise funds as far as the general fund, how the general fund supports those other funds, and that's the indirect cost allocation across all other funds.
Right, but bottom line is, if the power fund is in trouble, the general fund at some point is going to effectively have to make up that difference.
Which it normally does. It's done for the past 2 years, about the tune of $4 million now, I think. No, $7 million, put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If everything was going on in this past 2 years, I'd be a happy camper.
Right.
Now, this is a little ahead of where I had a question, and my question was fairly minor in terms of the dollar amounts we're looking at here, but I will jump to, since we're on that page, the next line item, the BIDA transfer. BIDA owes the power fund how much?
About $7 million.
Okay. And so at what point is BIDA paying that back?
Well, the way the city of College Park has agreed to pay that back is on an annual basis. And what they're not truly paying it back, it's just they're writing it off every year. That's what it's truly doing. BIDA is truly not paying it back. It's a write-off to the tune of $500,000 each year to get the debt off the books.
So why is it set to zero? Because in effect, you are absorbing $500,000 of BIDA cost, and it's showing zero on here as a recommendation in the budget.
because normally you wouldn't budget for that there. I guess the assumption has been that Bida will sell land and actually pay it back, but they haven't in the past since I've been here. So there is a slight chance that they may this year, and it won't be written off. There will actually be cash transferred to the power fund. If you all would like to see $500,000 budgeted there where they're just writing it off, I can do that. But in the past, that's not normally what we would budget. We would not budget that the write-off.
And ladies and gentlemen, given some of the land transaction discussions we had,
We can't hear you, Terrence.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Given some of the land transaction activity that's currently underway, we have some projections along those lines. To support Thea's point, there is reason to believe that this will not be a write-off scenario at this time. In fact, working with our external auditors, Martin and Jenkins, to that effect, that is the overall expectation in that realm as well.
Is that 7 million accounted for in our reserves?
Yes, ma'am.
So right now it doesn't exist.
Correct.
So when we talk about cash on hand in our reserves, what do we have?
When we talk about reserve is normally never cash on hand. It's basically your assets less your liabilities, and that gives you your reserve balance, and that includes due tos, due froms from other funds. That includes your entire fund balance. If Bida owes us $7 million, our fund balance includes that $7 million, which
we are owed that
by the power department, not Bida. The power department owes the general fund $7 million, and Bida owes the power department $7 million. So monopoly money.
So if Bida writes it off, that means they don't pay the power department, right?
Exactly. The cash.
Okay, and if the power
Which means
department
the power
doesn't,
department doesn't pay the general fund.
exactly.
Right.
Which is what we do not wish to happen. Thus the necessity to sell land so that we can get to the right place, ladies and gentlemen.
What if we don't get to the right place? Because I think that, and I know that this is a little left field from the power fund, but also a real important consideration for us to have as we enter into these uncertain economic times, because we don't know what happens in terms of land sales from this point going forward. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that Bida is fulfilling those obligations to the power fund, so the power fund can fulfill those obligations to the general fund. But I think that we need to speak. I think we need to be somewhat pragmatic about the fact that they may fall short of that as well, and we need to be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are going to get tight. This is Councilman Clay, I think, has been and excuse the analogy, Councilman, but you've been our canary in the coal mine. And you have been there early and often sounding the warning call about not only this pandemic, but the economic consequences that we may face as a result of it. And I think that we need to ensure that we are looking at this in a realistic way as much as we can. And while I think we should be optimistic, we should also think about what happens if Bida is not able to make those payments back, and what that looks like in terms of what we consider our reserves.
Mayor, the only thing I don't like about your analogy is, what happens to the canary?
That's fair. But yeah, I think we just need to have a very realistic conversation about what happens. And I understand tonight we need to keep on moving, but but that does need to be a component of how we address this. So we're prepared as possible to ensure that we're providing the level of service our citizens expect, and that we don't have to make deeper cuts because we have assumptions that we have money that we really don't have.
We don't want surprises.
Exactly.
We're going to get enough as it is. We just need to.
You bet.
Amen to that.
Any other questions or observations concerning power line?
I did have like I said, a minor question on page 1 of 5 of the budget worksheet. It is line 34, 41, 30. Why are we optimistic about the sales of recycled material?
Yeah, basically that's any conductor, anything that we resell. I think what's happened this year, it's gone in the wrong account because we have a lot of material, so we'll need to get that right.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, and I understand that I'm asking folks to be retrospective here, but why, when in 2019 on the line below 34,9,300, what that we had an actual amount of 4150 in return check fees? Why was that quadrupled for the 2020 amended budget? I mean, I can understand why we might expect that we're going to have increased return check fees in this environment, but that just doesn't even seem like a.
I think what happened at the time we did the budget, we did the math, year to date was already 4,000.
Ah, okay.
So, and that's why we were, whatever the number was, and that's why we went that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It just seemed exceptionally high based upon what happened the year prior. So, all right.
I've got a question on page 2 of 8 in the backup, if we're ready to move to the backup.
Please.
What page, what electronic page is that?
The electronic is 103.
Thank you.
So at the very bottom, the second line from the bottom, we have meter base replacement and repair. Now, from my meetings I've held with the guys for the last couple of years on fixing the AMI system, one of the things that came up in those meetings was that we have people stealing power, and they vandalize the base, and we have to fix it. So have we put a program in place to charge whoever owns the building that base is on, and let them sort out how they get paid by the person that vandalized it or by living there and decided they wanted to get free power?
Yeah,
Are we doing that?
Yeah, that meter base expense is expense out, and if they pay us back or reimburse us, then that's going to be in miscellaneous income. So that's how that works. We have to expense it out.
Okay, so there is an offsetting income, a revenue,
miscellaneous.
but it just doesn't show up against this.
Right.
Okay, that's good to hear. I've got another one in the backup on page 108 of the electronic, which is 7 of 8 in your paper copy of this section. Decorative lighting. We got some I see in various places. One is general, one is lakeshore, one is LED lighting, street lighting in general. My question is this, and I think the same thing is going to come up with sidewalks, and this is not going to be a popular question. So I'm going to get a lot of people mad at me probably, but that's okay. I've lived in places before that if you wanted something special for your street, you go to the city and you say, I want something, and get everybody together and you say, hey, I want something special for my street, whatever it is. I want sidewalks, I want brick sidewalks, whatever. And sure, that's okay. We'll assess you $100 a year for the next 10 years for everybody on the block. We don't do that. We don't do it with sidewalks. We don't do it with, well, in a way, we've done it with decorative lighting, because as I recall, in Oxford Walk, we split the cost with the builder, and we're trying to get that subdivision finished. And so we split the cost of the decorative lighting, but there was something paid for.
Right.
In the links, I think we split some cost on decorative lighting, if I remember, as well. And we've got another small area that I won't mention particularly, that we're trying to work out a deal where we're partially splitting the cost to get some lighting there, let alone decorative. So what is the deal, for example, in areas that, I'm not talking about Main Street or Godby Road or Virginia Avenue, or even if we did it on Old National, if you could figure out how to do it on Old National. I'm not talking about business areas. I'm talking about residential areas. Let's say we want to put decorative lighting down Rugby. I don't know whether people would even want it on Rugby. But if we decided we wanted to do that, is that something the city should pay for? Or should the residents say, hey, I want decorative lighting, we'll pay an assessment? I could ask the same question about Lakeshore Drive. How is that getting paid for? Is it getting paid for at all?
No, I think they're going to be a grant for sidewalks, and we're adding the lights to it.
So we got it paid for by a grant.
Not the lighting, just the sidewalks. I don't think they include lighting in those grants.
Okay, so there's a sidewalk issue that's always coming up. And so I wonder about that. There are large sections of the city, particularly in parts of Ward 1 up closer to Washington Road, where there are no sidewalks. We never got the builder to put the sidewalk in. We never charged them for it. Maybe they didn't want it in there. People bought the houses with no sidewalks. And as time has evolved, well, people want sidewalks. Similarly, people might want, heck, we might want decorative lighting on Lyle Avenue. So at what point do we say, because we're hurting for revenue, at what point do we say, well, hey, you know, we got to cut back on some of this stuff. And if the citizens really, really want it in a specific area, we work out an assessment. And I don't think I brought that up before. I'm sure it's unpopular, but times are tough. And I'm wondering if we ought to start considering things like that. I just throw that out to the council. It's not a question really for you, Richardson, you Richardson. And I don't expect an answer on the spot in this meeting, but I think it's something we should think about. So. I guess it wasn't popular. Everybody's totally quiet, so that's good.
Oh, I thought you were saying that we could think about it. I was thinking about
it. No. I thought somebody would say, well, okay, let's go on.
Oh. Well, you know, I think, Councilman, you and I have been on a chain of conversations about
right.
sidewalks in the last, in the recent past, and today included. And I think that, the grants that are available, I think we will see more grants to help support cities and other local jurisdictions as we move forward. That's my sense in talking with, the folks at GMA and our lobbyists in Washington, D.C., that eventually we will see some opportunities. What I would love for us to be able to do is take advantage of those opportunities. They may be ones that we just, don't typically have. And so if we could put emphasis somewhere, that might be the place if that materializes. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying that, we don't have to go to, that we may not face some other tough choices down the road. But I do feel as if there's going to be this sort of wave of support. You know, I'm sure you've read the articles as well that, you know, there are some people some small businesses that are getting very much needed funds as a result of the ramifications from this pandemic. And then there's other businesses that are going to do pretty darn well as a result and haven't and are going to be able to kind of come out ahead. And so I think that that we might find that there's a more flexibility with some of those funds that we may not have seen before.
Well, I'm all for getting as much grant money as we can, Mayor. And and that's a time to put a plug in for the census. For anybody that hasn't signed up and said they live in College Park, we need all the help we can get to get all the funds we can get.
Absolutely. It is the way that we are going to determine the funding that we get for the next decade. So it is vitally important. It takes less than 10 minutes to fill it out. You can go to my2020census.gov and make sure that you and your family are counted, because it's not only important for you individually, but it's important for our community. All right, PSA over.
Let me just mention one thing about the sidewalks. I think it's a very good point, but I think you also got the point. Let's just take our street over here, for instance, Hardin. It has sidewalks all the way down to Madison, but from Madison up to nearly Harrison, there's no sidewalks. So the kids walk down the street going to Woodward, and they don't have a sidewalk to walk in, so they're walking in the streets. So I think you have some other factors you need to consider in that as well.
Oh, absolutely, Ken. We've got the same problem on College.
Right.
We have a block or so of College that kids walk into the pool. During the summer, I see groups of 3 and 4 kids, you know, and they kind of expand out into the street. They don't walk on the very edge of the road. And with some of the crazy driving we've got around here, sooner or later, somebody's going to get hurt.
Absolutely.
But I don't know how to, in some of those areas, I don't know how to do it. We've got stone walls, we've got trees. It's a major effort from a construction standpoint to prepare that. It's not just a matter of digging up some dirt and pouring a sidewalk. But yeah, no, I agree with you. There are areas that we should do it. It was clearly not the intent of the builder or what did I say, the area. They didn't say they didn't want sidewalks. You have one here and you have one there, and there's a gap. Somebody got away with something and not having to put them in. But anyhow, we digress.
We are far from power, but yeah.
Yes.
Let's see if we can get back.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you're saying, and I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to have that discussion. But are there any other questions about
I'm good.
the electric?
Power Warehouse is next.
Can I make one more point? Just to stress, this budget does include a 5 mil adder for the winter rates. And this is a survey, if you can see it. Anyway, all 94 power companies are in here. Currently, our winter rates are 7th from the lowest in the state. And with this 5 mil adder, it'll go to the 14th of the lowest. Will still be very good rates. In case citizens are listening in now, our rates are still good. Even with the 5 mil adder, will be 12% below average. So I want to make that point.
Okay. Well, we
Thank
don't
you.
use as much power typically in the winter.
Right, that's the time to do so, ladies and gentlemen. So unless there's anything further regarding power line, I'd like for us to proceed with Power Warehouse. That's okay?
Yep.
Any questions, observations? This is extremely straightforward, always is, but nevertheless, we review it.
I have nothing here.
Nothing for me.
All right, Mayor, you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, Councilman Taylor, you okay?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Gay, you okay?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Next, customer service. And I like to emphasize each year that the customer service section is actually financed via the fact that we have the city's own electricity distribution utility. So with that, we are at liberty to address that particular section as well, please. Any questions regarding customer service?
I had one question on packet page 203. I actually already got an answer from Althea. I mean, page 203 of the budget worksheet report, which is electronic 159, and it's line 57,4,000 near the bottom, bad debt expense. And my comment was, why is the actual so low? Because we've had a lot of bad debt. We've forgiven a lot of bad debt. And the 2020 actual amount that's declared here is $431.51. And I would be in heaven if that was our actual bad debt or money that had been forgiven. So where do we take account of the fact that we're going to have problems with some people paying their utility bills? And with good reason. I understand that they're in a world of hurt. A lot of people are in a world of hurt. So how does the budget take that into account?
I can comment on that line item in the past. That was not the actual write-off of bad debt. It was the cost to the company to go out and collect it. That's what that line item used to be. So I don't know what it is now.
Okay, well, the cost of the company is they get paid pennies on the dollar when they collect bad debt. So then let me ask the question differently, or I'll ask the more general question. How do we take account in this budget of reduced revenue from utility payment?
Yeah, it's never been a line item.
Well, Hugh, didn't you we reduce the revenue?
Yeah, I did that. I did that because of the pandemic, but I think he's talking about uncollected monies.
Money that is truly owed us, that we haven't forgiven, that we say we
Right.
want. And we finally turn it over to a debt collection service. And they buy it from us, right? Isn't that true, Althea? They buy the debt from us?
No, they buy the debt from us? No,
do they buy the debt, or do they?
From us. They don't buy the debt from us.
They don't buy it on pennies on the dollar?
When they go out and collect it, and whatever they collect, they earn money from. They have to actually collect it. They don't purchase the debt from us.
Okay.
I love that.
Okay, all right. So we should have an account somewhere that says this is money that's owed us that we're trying to get collection on. We've turned it over to a collection agency, and they're out there trying to get it back.
That's not normally on the books. As far as when I say on the books, what I'm referring to is revenue versus expenses. At the end of the year, what generally happens is we go back and we look at the aging report. Basically, at 6:30, there's a report that tells us how much money are we owed between 0 to 30 days, 30 to 60 days, 60 to 90 days, 90 to 120, and beyond. And based on accounting practices, we have a formula we use to calculate how much of that is bad debt. We recognize 100% those that are 120 days over past due. We may recognize those that are 30 to 60 days, that's 50%. We would recognize 60% of that, and then the percentages go down. And then at that point, we can either reduce the revenue by what we say we may not collect, or we can basically expense it out.
Okay. So where I'm going with this is that presumably when we account for our reserves, we account for money owed to us, don't we?
Correct.
Okay. So if we say we have so many weeks of reserve or so many dollars of reserve, there's a portion of that reserve that is in question. True?
True.
Okay. The reason I'm asking these questions, actually, it's for the benefit of the people who are watching on TV too. Guys, pay your bills, please. Don't forget us. The city has the same kind of problem that everybody else has. And we need to be paying our bills. So we need to take account of this when we think about the budget. End of speech, sorry.
Any other questions or observations concerning customer service?
Yeah, let me just ask about 52, 5730. Last year it was around 22, 27. Now they requested 81 and it's up to 62. But when you go back, I guess a lot of it is on North Star annual renew.
That's
What
exactly
account
right,
is
Councilman.
that again? I'm sorry, what account is that?
That's 52.
730, repair and maintenance DP equipment. And
What
that's
page,
North Star.
Ken?
103 in the budget workshop report, worksheet report.
What page?
It's page 161 on the digital.
Digital version.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And a large enough portion of that is the North Star renewal. That's about $37,000 a year.
Was it not if it's the renewal, what was it last year? Was it the same amount or less amount, or what was it? Because last year you were showing like 22.
This year it was 33,000. This year was 33.5, and it goes up an additional 3 to 5% next year.
But
For the
he's
contract.
referring to 2019. Was that cost absorbed by?
Upgraded last year.
Oh, they upgraded last year. Okay, we upgraded
okay.
last year. So now there's a renewal maintenance each year?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's fine.
Okay, that explains.
Any other questions or observations, ladies and gentlemen, concerning customer service?
Nope.
Okay, Councilman Taylor, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Councilman Gay, are you okay?
Yes.
Mayor Motley Broom, are you okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'd like to proceed with meter reading, please. Fairly straightforward, however, we are available to address any specific questions or concerns that might exist or observations.
Can we get rid of a vehicle? Is that why the auto insurance the amendment didn't match? It's line 526100, page 1 of 2 on the digital. It's 170, page 178. I apologize for just asking that question and not.
Yes, we did. Last year we had a Blazer. It went over to IT.
Okay. Then that makes total sense.
Any other thoughts or observations concerning meter reading?
No, I'm gonna leave that one alone.
Councilman Taylor, are you okay?
Yes.
Councilman Gay, are you okay?
Yes.
Councilman Allen, sir.
I'm okay.
Okay, Mayor Motley Broom.
I will let you know if I'm not.
Of course you will. Yes, ma'am. On that note, the last presentation or discussion is the purchasing section of the Department of Finance and Accounting. So given that this is a function of fleet administration, purchasing fleet administrator who reports to the Director of Finance and Accounting, Willis Moody is here to address any specific questions, concerns, observations you may have. Please.
Well, I'm glad Willis was here for our earlier discussion, but I don't have any questions on his section specifically.
I
And
kind
if
of
I
feel
may,
badly he
Councilman
had to
Clay.
stay through the whole thing.
I'm sorry, Mayor Motley Bloom, please.
I was saying I feel kind of badly he had to stay for the whole thing. I mean, you know, he answered the questions up front, and I don't have any questions about his actual budget.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, Willis Moody's principal contributions was based on him being here earlier. So that's the primary reason for him being here, aside and apart from the sections review. Councilman Taylor, are you okay, sir?
Yes, sir. Looking at the book, that's it.
Okay, Councilman Gay, are you okay?
He's on mute. I'm gonna assume he's okay.
Okay, Ken Allen, are you okay, Councilman Allen?
I'm okay. Thank you very much.
I'm okay, Terrence.
Very well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With that,
Right.
that concludes this evening's deliberation for all the sections and departments that have been scheduled for this evening, Wednesday, April 15, 2020. Our next budget workshop deliberation will take place Tuesday, April 21st, 6:30, via the same virtual setup, followed by the immediate day, Wednesday, April 22nd. So I look forward to continuing to work with Mayor and City Council in this regard, and therefore to offer leadership and guidance accordingly. Unless there's anything further, ladies and gentlemen, please.
I have one comment.
Sir.
I'd like to publicly wish you happy birthday.
That's
Oh,
right.
great.
Oh, you got it, Councilman Gay. I had it in my brain earlier and I forgot to do it. Happy birthday, Terrence. Yes.
The
Thank
big
you,
hand.
ladies and gentlemen. And I
Happy
get to
birthday.
celebrate. I get to
You can all sing
celebrate.
happy
with fine
birthday if it
people.
weren't for the lag.
There it is. I'll have a Mountain Dew on it.
Happy 50th birthday again, Terrence.
Oh, stop
Wow. Why you just called out the numbers?
it. She's done that like several times today.
Yeah, I'm going to be very, very closely guarded. Don't you wish me a happy birthday later on this year, Shavela?
Yeah, she's pretty,
Oh.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Happy
too.
birthday.
Having too much fun with me. Calling me Uncle Terrence and everything. So,
All
on
right.
that note, I'm prepared to call it good. Unless there's anything further, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the kind words and the wishes. And again, thank you for our productive dialogue, and I look forward to next week.
Yeah, thanks to everybody. This is a hard job and it's particularly hard this year.
Yes, sir. But here we are.
Thank you,
So we'll keep at it.
Good
All
night,
right.
all.
Have a good
Good
evening.
night.
Good night.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Take
Night.
care. Good
Good
night.
night.